All right, today we're tackling a book that really shook things up in the world of science, Judea Pearl's The Book of Why. You know, for centuries, science has been great at telling us what happens, but it's always struggled, and I mean really struggled, to explain why. Well, that's all changing. We finally have the tools to ask that one question that makes us human. So, let's dive in.
Okay, we've all had this drilled into our heads, right? Correlation is not causation. It's like the first thing you learn in any stats class. And look, it's true. Just because two things move together doesn't mean one is pushing the other around. But here's the catch. For the longest time, that's where science kind of threw its hands up. It told us all the things we couldn't do with data.
So that leaves us with this massive, looming question. If just looking for patterns in data isn't going to cut it, then how in the world do we figure out what actually causes what? How do we get beyond just watching the show to actually understanding the script?
And this, right here, is where the causal revolution kicks in. Judea Pearl basically argues that we now have a whole new science, a formal language, that lets us, for the first time, climb out of that flat world of just seeing correlations and start drawing a true map of cause and effect.
Now, this might sound crazy, but for most of the last century, the entire field of statistics, the very discipline designed to make sense of data, actively dodged the word cause. Seriously. Key figures like Carl Pearson basically called causation a superstition, something unscientific. And that left a huge hole, a massive blind spot, right where our most important question should have been.
So to fix this, Pearl introduces this absolutely brilliant idea, the ladder of causation. It's simple, just 3 rungs, but each rung represents a huge leap in thinking, a more powerful way of understanding the world. Think of it as our roadmap for the journey ahead. Let's start climbing.
We're starting at the very bottom, on rung 1. This is the world of association. It's all about seeing, just observing the world, noticing patterns. This is what animals do, and believe it or not, it's also what most of today's powerful AI does. It's the world of traditional statistics, noticing that A and B tend to show up together.
So the kind of question you can answer here is pretty basic. What if I see, if I see a customer buying a certain product, what does that tell me about the likelihood they'll buy another one? It's all about making predictions based on observed patterns. Pure pattern matching.
But here's the fatal flaw of staying on this bottom rung: confounding. This is the classic example. You look at the data and see a crystal clear pattern. When ice cream sales go up, so does the crime rate. The correlation is undeniable. But does eating a pint of ice cream make you want to go rob a bank? Of course not. There's a hidden factor, a confounder. In this case, the hot summer weather, that's causing both. Rung 1 thinking is blind to this. It can't see the why behind the what.
And this is a really critical point to understand. Most of the AI that blows our minds today, the stuff creating incredible art or writing paragraphs of text, are absolute masters of rung 1. They are pattern recognition machines on steroids. But as Pearl says, they're like an owl that is a perfect hunter. It can predict its prey's every move, but it has absolutely zero idea why the prey is moving that way. It knows the dance, but it doesn't hear the music.
And this quote from Pearl just drives the point home. We see these amazing feats of pattern matching and think we're on the verge of true human-like AI. But without a causal understanding of the world, without the ability to climb this ladder, AI is stuck. It's operating with what Pearl calls animal-like abilities. It can predict what's next, but it can't explain why. To get any closer to real intelligence, we have to climb.
So, let's head up to rung 2, intervention. This is a huge leap. We're moving from being a passive audience member to being an actor on the stage. The question is no longer, what if I see something, but what if I do something? This barometer example makes the difference crystal clear. On rung 1, if you see the barometer's needle fall, the probability you assign to a storm coming goes way up. That's a simple association. But now let's jump to rung 2. What if you intervene? You walk over, you take a hammer, and you smash the glass and force the needle down. Did you just cause a storm? Of course not. The real-world probability of a storm is totally unchanged. That right there is the power of rung 2 thinking. It lets you slice through a correlation to find the actual cause.
And the causal revolution actually gives us a piece of math for this, something called the do operator. It might look a little intimidating,
P of y do of x, but it's just a clean mathematical way of asking that question we just acted out. What is the probability of y if I reach in and make x happen? It's the language of a controlled experiment, but written in a way a computer can understand.
This is where things get really, really cool. Rung 2 is the level of action, of control. It lets us ask, how do I make something happen? But here's the magic trick. If you have a good causal map of the world, you can often use this do operator to answer that question using the passive Rung 1 data you already have. You can calculate the result of a perfect randomized experiment without ever having to run it. That's a game changer.
Okay, now we're taking the final step, up to the top of the ladder, to Rung 3, imagining. This is the realm of counterfactuals, of what-ifs. And honestly, until very recently, this was considered the stuff of philosophy or science fiction, completely beyond the reach of math or science.
So what is a counterfactual? It's asking a question about a past that didn't happen. What if I had taken that other job? Would the patient have survived if the doctor had chosen a different treatment? Now, this isn't just daydreaming. Pearl argues this is the absolute foundation of our most complex human traits, things like regret, credit, blame, and even our sense of free will. It all depends on our ability to compare the world as it is to a world that could have been. The firing squad problem shows us how this works in practice. So first, we have our causal map. The court order leads to the captain's signal, which causes both riflemen to shoot, leading to the prisoner's death. Simple enough. Second, we have our fact. The prisoner is dead. Now for the Rung 3 question, what if Rifleman A had decided not to shoot? With a causal model, we can actually calculate this. We perform what Pearl calls mathematical surgery. We go back into our model, we snip the arrow leading from the captain's signal to Rifleman A, and we rerun the simulation. The answer? The model tells us the prisoner would have died anyway, because Rifleman B still fired. We just did formal, logical reasoning about a world that never existed.
And that is the core of real understanding. Answering why isn't just about seeing a pattern, or even knowing what will happen if you flip a switch. It's about understanding the deep causal fabric of the world so well that you can compare reality to an imagined reality. That's what separates us from the owl. That's true intelligence.
So, what's the big deal? Why does climbing this ladder matter so much? Well, the implications are just enormous. They change everything about how we do science, and maybe more importantly, how we think about building the future of artificial intelligence. So let's just recap the journey. The ladder of causation gives us 3 distinct levels of intelligence. Rung 1 is for prediction, seeing the future. Rung 2 is for control, changing the future. And Rung 3, the top rung, is for understanding, explaining the past and asking why. To build a machine that's truly intelligent, one that we could actually have a conversation with, that could explain its reasoning, that could take responsibility for its actions, it has to be able to operate on all 3 rungs. And for the first time in history, we actually have a blueprint for how to build it. And this takes us into some pretty deep and fascinating territory. Think about this. Can we build a moral robot? Well, to be a moral agent, a machine can't just follow a list of rules. It has to understand the consequences of what it does, and, crucially, what it doesn't do. It must be able to ask itself, what would have happened if I'd acted differently? By definition, a moral robot has to be a Rung 3 creature. It needs the power of imagination. It needs counterfactuals. And I want to leave you with this powerful thought from Pearl. He says that by turning counterfactuals into algorithms, we are inviting machines to think in a way that, until right now, has been completely uniquely human. This is so much bigger than just building a better recommendation engine. It's about creating partners in thought. So the real question the Book of Why leaves us with is this: what happens when our creations can not only see the world as it is, but can also imagine all the worlds that could have been?